This is the Living in Havering podcast.
Welcome along to the Living in Havering podcast. I'm Ben Vaughan. This is your monthly slice of life in Havering, where we meet the residents, businesses and partners about the big issues affecting them. Coming up, we'll be speaking to Cathy Freeman, Havering's finance chief, as the council prepares another challenging budget for the year ahead. And as always, we'll be putting your questions to Cllr Ray Morgon in our exclusive monthly Leaders Question Time. But first, it's time to grab a litter pick as we take a closer look at our flagship campaign, Where We Live, aiming to make the borough cleaner and safer. Living's Laura Birkin has more.
This is the Living in Havering podcast. Where We Live is Havering Council's flagship campaign aimed at encouraging residents to take pride in the borough. Whether you take part in community litter picks, help transform a grot spot into a pocket garden, or just keep the area around your home tidy, we all have a part to play in keeping Where We Live a clean and pleasant place to be. I caught up with members of the Romford Town and Harold Hill Womble groups to hear how they have been looking after their neighbourhoods.
Hiya, I'm Rob. I'm from the Romford Town Wombles. We're a group that's been going for, this is our third year. We kind of pick up litter and we tidy up. So we report things to the council. So, if there's fly tipping or that kind of thing, or a broken street light reported the other day, there's, a really kind of simple and quite straightforward way to do that kind of stuff. We also return shopping trolleys. We just had a look at our January count. So we've done over sort of 50 in January. So it's quite a lot. It's a bit of an issue in Romford. So one of the things we also link into is the Where We Live campaign from Havering Council, which we find has been really kind of helpful. What that serves to do is bring some of the volunteer groups together, and it's kind of a platform for sort of residents and community groups to engage. And so that's been helpful for us to sort of make some connections with council folks, understand how all things work a bit more, and get some support for what we do. So, lots of people talk about the council's responsibility to keep the streets clean. Well, really that starts with us as residents, and so I encourage people not to drop litter. That would be our main thing. We don't really want to go out in the rain and cold as it is at the moment, litter picking, but we do because we want it to be nicer, and if people would treat ththings well, it would be so much easier for everyone.
Hello, I'm Michelle. I run the Harold Hill Wombles.
And what do you get out of it, in your local community?
I mean, initially it's just cleaning up the area, seeing areas much cleaner and tidier. Just so depressing when you walk past all this litter and fly tip. Just things looking lovely and clean and green. So blessed with the wildlife we've got around here. We've got to respect it and look after it because we need it. Thinking that you're actually doing something for climate change, for biodiversity crisis, to be able to do this small action, it's just so, it's wonderful, it makes you feel great.
The Where We Live campaign is shining a light on volunteers like yourself. What does that mean to you?
I think the campaign's been an absolute blessing. It's brought all us voluntary groups together. We've had some really fantastic meetings, ongoing support, and it just feels like that things have stepped up a bit. I just think everything's about working together. Nobody can fix this problem of litter and fly tip on their own. It's got to be a joint effort, everyone working together. Join one of the Wombles group. There's loads out there now. And just come when you can, there's no commitment. Just come when you can. The support's there from the council now. And we're really making a change and a difference, and it's just brilliant.
What's your message to those that drop litter?
I think it's just a culture change. Obviously, kids learn from their parents, from stuff around them. So I do think that's why it's so important that they don't see litter, because then you just think, oh, it's a mess, I'll just add to it. We're still clearing up. I found marathon wrappers from 30 years ago. So we're still cleaning up the litter that you dropped 30, 40 years ago. So just stop.
Havering Volunteer Centre has also been vital in helping connect volunteers with Wombles and other groups to play their part. I spoke to Shelley Hart at the Havering Volunteer Centre about their work.
At the Havering Volunteer Centre, we engage people into volunteering activities and also help voluntary sector organisations engage volunteers for their services. Since our 10 years in operation, we have helped over 14,500 individuals embark on volunteering, and currently we have 6,000 volunteers registered with us, with more than 4,000 volunteers active in our communities. We see how volunteering brings people together and makes Where You Live become a neighbourhood.
Shelley, I understand the Volunteer Centre played a major role in transforming a grot spot. Can you tell us more about that?
Through volunteering support, we have turned an unloved grot spot in Elmer Gardens, Rainham. It was a dumping ground for fly tipping. It was covered in weeds and debris on the grass. Something needed to be done to make this area brighter and cleaner. And with the help of the local authority, Elm Site Services and our wonderful team of volunteers from Havering Volunteer Centre, we have turned this unloved space into a clean, clear, much-loved corner of land that looks so much better. And we have planters full of plants and shrubs, which will encourage wildlife and biodiversity.
If someone wanted to get involved with the Havering Volunteer Centre, how should they go about it?
We'd love to hear from you, and if you want to become involved in volunteering and become one of our community heroes, please contact the Havering Volunteer Centre 01708 92214 or volunteering@haveringvc.org.uk.
You're listening to the Living in Havering podcast, and I'm now joined by Councillor Barry Mugglestone, Cabinet Member for Environments. Hello, Barry.
Hello, Ben. How are you today? You okay?
Yeah, all well, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Very busy.
Well, thanks very much for joining us here on the Living in Havering podcast. Now, Barry, we're just hearing about the Where We Live campaign. So can you just start by telling us what's the main idea behind that?
Yeah, Where We Live campaign is a bit of partnership, working with the residents of the London Borough of Havering and also with our stakeholders like FFC about making Havering a cleaner and a safer place to be and empowering the community to take pride in where we live.
And you mentioned their community pride. Now, some people, a cynic perhaps, may think, well, is this not just a way for the council to pass the buck onto residents to essentially do the street cleaning and get involved in their communities because the council can't afford to or don't want to do it?
No, that's not the case, Ben. As I said, I'm very proud of where I live in Elm Park. I've lived there 61 years. I've done community clean-ups. And as I said, it's nice to go out. And when we do it in Elm Park, the community come up to us and say, thank you very much for what you're doing. Havering Council are delivering services, which is important. They still deliver. But if we can do that little bit extra in our community and make ourselves proud of where we live.
Right, so it's about working together then to really, as you said, empower the community and build that community pride. So I suppose the big question is have you seen any results? Is there a general increase in tidiness across the borough since the campaign launched?
Oh, Ben, there's a massive, massive improvement. As I said, the Wombles volunteer groups, they just started with 2 groups. And now we've got up to 11 in the borough. And along with other volunteering groups like Havering Clean Streets, carrying out litter picks and clean up in their own time. And as I said, so far we've had over 150 litter picks events. I've not been involved in 150 of them, but I've been involved in quite a lot of them. And as I said, over 500 bags of rubbish collected from the streets.
So we heard earlier, Barry, before you joined us, from members of some of the Wombles groups in the borough, which you just mentioned. So I think you said you've been out with them a few times. What kind of things have you taken away from that?
The community spirit, as I said, people feel valued members of the community. It's all generations as well, it's youngsters and it's elderly people like myself, you know what I mean? A few months ago, I was actually walking around Elm Park. There's all these young little children walking around. It was amazing. And Saturday morning, they brought out their parents. They walked out around as a community. So it's nice to see the youngsters getting involved as well.
It's great to hear that.
It is, Ben. As I said, it's so important that we work together as a community. Since COVID, I think people have realised now, actually, we need good community cohesion. We need to work together. It makes it a better place.
So some really valuable work taking place there. What other top stats could you give us, Barry, from the success of the campaign so far? I know that fly tipping is one of the major issues. So what have we done there?
It's quite interesting because a lot of residents now reported fly tipping online. As I said, fly tipping is a burden to us all, but now they're reporting it. We are now having a lot of people getting caught out and actually getting fined. I know the people aren't happy about getting the fines, but if you want to treat our borough as a place you can dump your rubbish, you will get fined and you will get taken to court about it. We do need the residents to be our eyes and ears to report these fly tips.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's very reassuring for residents to hear that we are being so tough on fly tippers. Okay, one last thing. We heard from Shelley at the Volunteers Centre, and she mentioned about grot spots. So is this just a buzzword? And can you tell us a bit more
about what
Yeah,
actually a grot spot is?
Yeah, I won't say it's a buzzword. Grot spot is the areas you see in your local area where the classic one is Elmer Gardens. It was totally run over with brambles and it was a total mess. And also local community to come together and with one of our contractors and actually improve the area. Now, when you drive past that area, you look at it and you think, that's a really nice area. It's tidy, it's clean, it's where people want to go. Any like hotspot, grot spots like that, if they can bring it to our attention, we will work with the community and give them support. And in that example, the local ward councillors worked with the community and cleaned it up. We've got one in Elm Park, little trainees. We've improved it. And now, as the children and mums walk past, they look at it. It's an improved area.
So I'm going to move away from where we live now. And just lastly, Barry, I just wanted to touch on this. You're Cabinet Member for Environment. Now, it's one of the universal services, essentially, one of the services that is most visible to residents in terms of what the council do. So looking back at your time as Cabinet Member, what will you take away from it?
Well, one of the major aims is that we've always funded our S92 police officers, and they are amazing guys. There's 6 police officers, and they go around working with Havering Council, targeting like HMOs, stolen vehicles, and their success rate is unbelievable. Also, we've held 2 crime summits in 2025, which was important because the community said to us one of the priority is safety. And I believe London Borough of Havering is a very safe borough with all the work this administration's done. And we agreed to spend £3 million on upgraded CCTV, which was so out of date, it was unbelievable. So that's a really, really positive. And also knife crime, a very important thing that we've got to deal with. And we've installed a knife surrender bin in Howard Hill. In the first 6 months last year, over 200 knives and weapons were taken off our streets.
Great to hear of some real results in terms of safety, which is clearly a priority for residents. I suppose another big priority for them is getting around the borough, and we are a car borough. So roads are very, very important for Havering residents. Have you done anything there to make their lives easier? Obviously, potholes, a big gripe.
Yep, for the last 4 years, we've financed £6 million into each year to improve resurfacing. And also what we've done as well is we've done a fix and repair fan, which goes out around, and also you will pick up the odd bits that isn't reported. And when they are reported, they are in the system and they get repaired. So I do believe Havering roads are very good condition.
Well, Barry, we are at the end of our time. Thanks so much again for joining us here on the Living in Havering podcast and for putting the litter pick down for a few minutes to take some time to speak to us.
No problems, Ben. Thank you for listening to me, and I wish the residents all the best.
Great. Thanks, Barry. All the best.
You're listening to the Living in Havering podcast.
Now, we're at that time of year where the council is getting ready to prepare Havering's budget for the next year. And with the amount of government funding and rising costs and demand still not enough to balance the books, it's going to be another challenging one. So we're joined by the person holding the purse strings and navigating the council through these choppy waters. It's a first time Living in Havering welcome to Cathy Freeman, the council's Strategic Director of Resources and Finance Chief. Hello, Cathy.
Hi, Ben. Good to see you today.
Good to see you, and thank you very much for taking the time out to speak to us here on the Living in Havering podcast. I do appreciate that it's obviously a very busy and most probably stressful time for you at the moment. So can you just tell us what's happening?
It is a really busy time of year, and yeah, I mean, it is a little bit stressful as well for me personally. There is an awful lot of work that's going on right now. We've been allocated new funding from the results of the fair funding redistribution that the government's basically been promising us for years now, and this year is the year where everything's been crystallised for us. And we've also had the analysis of the local government settlement to go through in details.
So you mentioned their government funding settlement funding formula review. Now, I know the council's done a lot of lobbying last year, especially in terms of getting that funding formula changed to make it fairer for what Havering gets from the government. Speaking to Ray Morgan, council leader, just before Christmas, he was hoping for a fairer funding settlement. I'm not sure Santa fully delivered, but are you happy with what we've got?
I would have liked more funding, and who wouldn't like extra funding? Because the funding we received, although it's a huge win for the council, unfortunately isn't enough, and it certainly doesn't meet our current needs, let alone the needs that we'll have going forward, to reflect the fact that our population's growing, our demographic profile has changed significantly, and we are incurring more costs on a day-to-day basis supporting a lot more vulnerable residents. I was looking after the funding model, I would have looked to have allocated Havering a lot more of the funding that we can then deliver our services in full without needing to rely on borrowing, for example.
Okay, and on that point, we've publicised quite widely that the last few years we've had to take essentially what is a loan from government to be able to plug that budget gap and present a balanced budget, which the council has to do by law. So you were hoping for a fairer funding settlement. It's come through. We've got a bit more, but it's not as fair or as much as you wanted. What else can we do?
So that's a really tricky one, Ben, because we have been working really closely with central government just to communicate the level of costs that we're incurring. And also the other thing to mention is that central government very much have ambitions and intentions for all councils to be financially sustainable over the medium-term financial plan period. Unfortunately, it does mean that we'll have to make some really tough decisions regarding the level of expenditure and the level of new funding we add into the budget.
We're in a bit of a bind, really.
We are in a bit of a bind. We're in this position simply because the funding we receive and the funding we're able to generate through council tax is insufficient to deliver the cost of our services.
So no easy options. Just to throw back to something you mentioned there, 2 words actually, don't always go down well, council tax.
Yes.
So what's that looking like for this year?
So the first thing I want to say about council tax is I recognise that there are many residents out there that feel that council tax is possibly an unfair tax. However, the government have been really, really clear that they expect all councils to be putting up council tax by the 4.99%, which is in effect what they call the referendum threshold. And they've allocated us funding, assuming that all councils will be increasing council tax every year for the next 3 years. If we didn't do so, that would directly affect the level of funding that we receive and collect as a council.
All right, so council tax will be going up pretty much as it will everywhere. Now, a lot of people believe they know where their council tax money goes. So we have been out and about in the borough, or rather Will Taylor has been quite brave in going out and about in the borough to ask residents what they think about council tax and where they think their money goes. Shall we take a listen, Kathy, at what people say?
Please.
Over to Will.
Yeah, where do you think most of Havering Council's money is spent?
To be very frank, it's hard to know. It's hard to understand because, Havering is littered with potholes from, whichever area you look at.
Rubbish gets taken away regularly. We don't have Manchester problem.
Refuge, rubbish. They spend a lot of money on rubbish. Special needs, which is understandable.
The underprivileged, the people that struggle, it needs to be looked at.
It's not right, is it? Because the population in Havering has gone up and there are a lot more senior people in Havering than there were in 2010. And we've got one of the highest populations of young children. They need to give us more money, don't they?
I would say supplementing the homeless people, putting immigrants in properties, building houses, supplementing council properties.
I would imagine roads, repairs, upkeep of around the borough.
I don't think anybody would dispute how the budget is split up amongst services. It's just that currently it's plainly not enough.
Now, obviously, last year Havering Council put the council tax price up by 4.99%. Do you think that's fair on residents?
I don't think we get our money's worth according to the size of the house you live in. We live in a 4-bedroom house and it costs us £4,000 a year to basically get nothing.
The general state of the amount of homeless and people on the streets that you see, so you could ask where the money is going into. Is it into social care or not enough money into social care?
I think it's always difficult when the prices of council tax go up, and every year you think I've got to make allowances to include that into my budget every year, but everything's going up, so the council tax can't stand still, can it?
All right, so Living's Will Taylor there, out and about, asking people where they think their council tax money goes. Quite a mix of opinions there, Kathy.
I know. It's quite an array of different thoughts and processes and opinions, isn't there?
Absolutely. One thing that struck me was that a lot of people believe that the bulk of the money goes on the visible services, big ticket items such as the roads, pothole repairs, community safety, rubbish collection, the services people can see. But actually, the lion's share of the services don't go on that, do they?
No, not at all. And it is really interesting and not surprising, to be honest. However, about 70% and a little bit over 70% goes on supporting around 2% of our total resident base. The majority of our funding and our money goes towards supporting those requiring children's social care. Some of the budget goes on supporting children with special educational needs as well, because we also have a duty to provide transport, for example, older people that need care and support. We're seeing a big increase as well of those requiring temporary accommodation that come looking for support. So if you think about where the lion's share of the funding goes and the money goes, there's a clear disparity between what people's expectations are and, where the council actually spends its money on.
That's massive, isn't it? And the other thing, I suppose,
Absolutely.
to add to that is that these are services that we have to deliver by law.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Kathy, last question for you. What keeps you awake at night and what gets you up in the morning?
Honestly, Ben, and I hope people don't take this in the wrong way, but I am really, really tired at the moment because we're working incredibly hard. I don't actually have any trouble sleeping at night. That being said,
well, that's good. That's good because you need the energy for the next day.
It is good. But that being said, when I sleep, I dream about work, and I have these odd moments where I have numbers just fill my head, and my dreams are quite random. So how rested I feel when I wake up is another thing, despite not being able to sleep at night. Now, your other question in terms of what motivates me and what gets me up every morning, I think that's a lovely question. So yes, the job is really stressful. Yes, the job is hard. However, I really, really enjoy what I do because I know that through effective decision making, through trying to manage our finances as well as we can as a council, we can actually do as much as I can to get the best funding and the best deal and the best support for the residents of Havering, and that actually keeps me motivated. I really do enjoy my job. Sometimes it's probably a more conceptual enjoyment than enjoyment of the actual day job. But I do feel like it's such a privilege to be here, to be working on behalf of the residents, and that's what keeps me going every day.
That's brilliant. And of course, you live in the borough, Kathy. I'm not sure if you wanted me to tell people that, but you do. So therefore, when you say, you're doing it for residents, you're also doing it for your family too.
Absolutely. I have lived in the borough since I was very, very young, since I was 7 years old. I am really proud to be a resident of the borough. I genuinely care about what happens to Havering. My children, they go to school here. They've been brought up here. My parents live across the road from me. And I've attended local schools. I won't name which ones, but I am a product of Havering. I'm a product of the Havering education system. I went to college here as well, so I've got really strong ties. I'm just one of those people that I don't know, I suppose I really like to get involved, and I'm personally invested in terms of how we get on and securing the best deal we can for the Havering residents, because I am one of them.
Absolutely.
My children would grow up here as well. Yes, absolutely.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much again, Kathy, for taking the time, the precious time that you have to speak to us here on the Living in Havering podcast. And I hope after this interview, I've still got a job. Thank you.
Absolutely, Ben. All right. Thank you. See you soon, Ben. Take care.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
This is the Living in Havering podcast.
You're listening to the Living in Havering podcast. Now it's time for the part of the podcast where we put your questions to the leader of Havering Council, Cllr Ray Morgon, in our monthly Leaders Question Time. So Ray joins us now. Hello, welcome along, Ray.
Yes, good afternoon, Benjamin.
How's it all been going?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's been very busy as usual, but lots of things going on, but all good.
Good stuff. And currently, we spoke to Kathy Freeman earlier in the podcast in the final throes of pulling next year's budget together.
Yes, the budget obviously obviously is a sort of key focus point. As many residents know, we're obviously in a very financially challenging position, and we're having to apply for exceptional financial support from the government because we've had many years of underfunding.
Absolutely, and we spoke quite in depth with Kathy on that, so we won't dwell on that one this time round because we have had lots of questions in for you this month again. Now, we'll do our best to get through them all, but any that we don't get to, we will of course do our best to respond via email. So Ray, diving straight in, the first question this month comes from Carol. She asks why our roads are not being resurfaced. She says patching does not work, especially with dry tarmac, which just pops out again with rain and ice. Every road you go down has potholes all over the place. Even the speed bumps are now starting to fall apart. What do you say to that?
Well, despite the financial pressures, we have spent several millions on resurfacing many roads and pavements in the borough because we know that it's really important for residents to be walking along safe and secure pavements and also safe and secure roads. But of course, this time of year in particular, with the considerable amount of extra rain we seem to have had this winter, the likelihood of potholes appearing massively increases. However, we have people out and about all the time picking up these potholes and therefore making sure that they are repaired as soon as possible and to the standard we all want to see.
So there you go, Carol. We are out there fixing roads and pavements. If there's a pothole that you're aware of, then do, of course, get in touch with the council and we'll do our best to resolve it. So on to question 2, Ray. This comes from Mark. He says so many people have been caught in additional congestion around Gallows Corner. He hopes that the council will be getting TfL and Essex and Suffolk Water to repair the roads around the closure as the local roads are being damaged by the additional heavy vehicles. So essentially this is about Gallows Corner, the ongoing flyover works and compensation.
Yes, indeed, and certainly we're very much aware of the impact that the closure of Gallows Corner has had for local residents and businesses, and of course the impact that's had on many of our local roads because obviously the heavier vehicles, rather than having to use the flyover or going round Gallows Corner, have had to use other roads around the area, which has had the impact of damaging some of those roads. And certainly we have been pressing TfL and Essex and Suffolk Water about receiving compensation to cover the cost of those additional repairs that are going to be required.
Okay, all right. And there was also some good news recently around Gallows Corner and that project's end date.
Yes, indeed. Yes, we've now been given a date of the 30th of April. We pressed very hard to make sure that they were absolutely confident that they would meet that date because obviously, as residents will be aware, some of the early estimated dates have been missed by quite considerable margins.
All hands to the pump to meet that date. So there you go, Mark. There is light at the end of the tunnel, or in this case, the flyover. Now, Ray, we'll move on to question 3. This comes from Carmen. She says, I would like to know if or when the council will consider providing wheelie bins for our household rubbish in order to prevent the unhealthy and unsightly activity of both foxes and rodents. Now, other boroughs nearby and some neighbouring boroughs have introduced wheelie bins quite a while ago. Havering still using the old bin bags.
Indeed. Well, one of the things that is coming up is that councils, because of changes in legislation, will have to separately collect food waste, and we will certainly obviously be doing that. What we're waiting for at the moment is the new vehicles in order to collect the waste, and obviously we've ordered all the food caddies, etc. So that will be coming in during the year, and obviously once that's in place, we will be considering whether this is a good time and opportunity to consider bringing in wheelie bins as well. But at this moment of time, that hasn't been decided one way or the other.
All right, there you go, Carmen. Our next question comes from Debs. It feels like older properties are being left behind in upgrade plans. I've been a resident for 40 years and I'm not entitled to a single upgrade.
I'm assuming, of course, this property in question is a council property, and obviously I'd need to see specific details to sort of answer the question very precisely. However, what I will say is the council is very committed to making sure that council properties are warm, safe and secure homes and have the appropriate level of maintenance carried out on it. So If there are issues, then if that person wishes to write to me, then I'm happy to refer it to the Director for Housing so that it can be looked at to see what, if anything, can be done. But we don't differentiate between old or new.
And I think that's the message, isn't it? Because there's been a big emphasis on our regeneration projects, new developments, building new homes for Havering residents. But we also do have a programme to improve and upgrade our existing properties. The idea is that they're not left behind. Okay, well, there you go. Debs, drop Ray a line and hopefully we can get that sorted. Now, we're moving on, and this is all about flags, Ray. So it comes from Robert, and he's asking why the council's lampposts are adorned with flags of St George and the Union flag. Isn't it the council's duty to remove them because they have been placed there illegally as fly posting? The flags also create social hatred and community division.
Clearly there's been an increase in the number of national flags that are being flown off of lampposts and other places, and we are very clear in our position in Havering that we have no problem with those flags being flown because we are a very patriotic borough. However, we will remove the flags if they are causing any danger. For example, if they are obscuring drivers' vision whilst driving along the road, things like that. But if they're there in a safe way, then we'll leave them there because, there should be no reason why we shouldn't be flying flags as we do the national flags outside the town hall. And in terms of it causing problems, now I have regular meetings with the faith leaders in the borough, and certainly that's not really been an issue that's been raised. And very recently we have had a cohesion summit, and again, none of that was raised. So in terms of social issues or hatred or anything like that, Havering is considered to be a very calm, safe and cohesive borough, and long may that continue.
Of course, and Ray, when this issue, if you like, first came to light sort of more nationally, the idea of flying the Union Jack and the St George's flag, a lot of boroughs came out and said that they would be removing them. You came out here in Havering as leader of the council to say that you wouldn't be removing them unless they were causing a safety issue, as you said. What was the reason for that?
Well, over many years I've travelled abroad a lot, and wherever I go around the world, it's quite usual for the national flags to be flown, and as a person who's visiting that country, I see that as absolutely fine. You should be happy to be flying the national flag, and I think generally the population of Havering equally is happy that we are flying the flag.
I hope that answers your question, Robert. We're now moving on to Jules. Nearly a year after its almost £900,000 renovation, Upminster Tithe Barn remains empty. All the museum exhibits were put into storage by volunteers before the refurbishment back in May 2024, and they were hoping the barn would be open this year to mark its 50th anniversary in the summer. However, when asked what's going to be happening to the barn, Havering Council says that the decision on its future has still not been decided. So what is happening with Tithe Barn, Ray?
Yes, since the renovation, obviously there's been a number of discussions of how to best utilise the barn, and certainly I've heard of lots of discussions taking place around the potential different uses of the barn. But obviously before it can be fully used for things like craft fairs and events and other things, obviously there's still some internal works to be done to make it as a sort of comfortable place to hold an event as possible. But certainly the renovated barn is an absolute gift in terms of what can it do to provide a really, really, really nice place to hold events, and certainly that will be something that will be happening in the future.
Looking at the pictures and videos, and I know you've been down there too, the restoration project, really amazing project.
No, absolutely, yeah, no, it looks really, really good.
So there you go, Jules. Hopefully you'll be back in Tithe Barn and enjoying the new restored community asset very soon.
Yeah.
Right, Ray, believe it or not, we're on to our last question this month, and it comes from Robert. He's asking about Romford being turned into an inner city through all the building projects taking place. He says it's causing congestion, and it's also causing overcrowding and pressure on public and emergency services such as Queen's Hospital. So what are you as council leader and the council doing to try and prevent this so-called overcrowding and pressure on our public services?
Yeah, the difficulty is that most of the development developments that come forward are private developments, and when a planning application is submitted, provided that it meets the national, local, and because we're a London Borough, mayoral guidelines, then it's very difficult for a planning officer to recommend anything other than approval. And of course, if it does meet the guidelines and we were to reject it, then the applicant would have the opportunity to go to appeal, and the likelihood would be is that they would win that appeal, which would then cost the council money. So we look very carefully at any development and making sure it does meet the appropriate guidelines. However, with some of the developments, we do obviously press to see whether we can get a health facility within that particular development. One good example is actually, fun enough, in my own ward, where there was a former hospital site which was acquired by Bellway Homes, and they've obviously built a residential development there. However, right next door to the site is a new medical hub.
Okay, all right. Well, Ray, sadly, we are out of time for this month. So if we didn't get round to your question, we will send all queries on to the leader or the relevant council department. Or, of course, feel free to send another question for the next episode. Just email living@havering.gov.uk. Thanks again, Ray. Good to see you, and have a good month, and we'll catch you in March.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ben.
Take care.
You too.
You're listening to the Living in Havering podcast.
Well, that's it for this episode. We'll be back in March for more deep dives into the borough and the people that make it a great place to live, work and visit. So if you have a story you think others want to hear, or a burning question for the leader of the council, you can get in touch by emailing living@havering.gov.uk. Remember to like and subscribe and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, and now WhatsApp. Also, make sure to sign up to our free weekly Living in Havering email newsletter, bringing you the latest news and events from Havering and those all-important council service changes. You can subscribe on our website at havering.gov.uk/newsletters. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next month. The Living in Havering podcast was presented by Ben Vaughan, the producer was Will Taylor, and the executive producer was Marcus Chrysostomou.